Hello and welcome to this session on performing under pressure. Today we're going to be talking about addressing anxiety and cultivating your confidence. If you have ever experienced stress, pressure, anxiety in school, which I think is pretty much all of us as teachers, be it through a lesson observation, parents' evening, performance management review, a job interview, whatever it is, this session is for you. So before we get into it, I want to talk to you about one part of the brain in particular called the reticular activating system, or RAS. And it's a fascinating part of the brain that acts like a filter for information. You can think of it as a bit of a gatekeeper for your consciousness. It's responsible for regulating arousal, sleep and wake transitions, and mostly attention, which is the part of it we're going to be thinking about today. Just to give you a really practical example, have you ever noticed that when you read a book or a story, and a visual image starts to come into your mind, it fills your imagination and your consciousness, and the outer world starts to begin to fade away a little bit. You don't hear people talking around you, you might not even notice time go by, and that is due to your reticular activating system focusing your attention on the task in hand. It's focusing your consciousness. Or another example, maybe you're sat in a staff meeting and there's lots of people talking, but you're deep in conversation with someone. You don't hear what everyone else has to say. You don't notice that the sun's going down. You don't notice, again, maybe that time's passing until someone says your name. And strangely, that cuts through the noise and that gets through to you because your name is something that your reticular activating system really hones in on. So just a few examples there as well. So as humans, we take in roughly 11 million pieces of data every single second. But obviously we can't consciously process all of that. In fact, we can only consciously process up to around 40 pieces of information per second. So your RAS is essentially a way of filtering the unnecessary, unimportant information so that you can focus on what is most important to you. Now, of course, this is sometimes going to draw our attention to things we don't want it to. For example, mistakes we've made in the past. For example, the threat or the seeming threat of a lesson observation or a job interview, the fear that we're experiencing. So a big role that the RAS plays in our brains is to, again, identify threats amongst our sort of environments, essentially. So you can see how with our confidence, it might focus us in places where we feel less confident, or mistakes we've made, or times that we might have messed up a little bit. And again, with anxiety, you can see how it's going to spot fear, essentially, and bring that into your consciousness. So that's why I wanted to talk you through the RAS today, because it's a really key part of the brain that we need to understand, because essentially, we are going to exploit it. We are going to use it to our advantage today. Now, when it comes to confidence, I want to quickly talk you through why sometimes we struggle so much and how the RAS is going to play into this. So quite often, our RAS will be scanning for information, it'll be honing in on the most important information, but we also have what is called a negativity bias in our brains. And that is particularly going to look out, part of the RAS is going to look out, as I said earlier, for the threats and the things that are potentially going to harm us. But nowadays, as teachers, the threat might be a child's behaviour, it might be an email from a parent, it might be a deadline that's approaching. So it's no longer saber-toothed tigers and woolly mammoths, it's much more sort of day-to-day stuff that can spark this negativity bias. So our negativity bias will pay attention through the reticular activating system to the perceived threat, or, in this case with confidence, the time that you messed up, the thing that didn't go right. And it will hone in on the tiny piece of evidence that you have that you're not good enough for this job, or you're going to mess up in this lesson observation. And what it will do is, off the back of that, it will create a conclusion, i.e., I'm going to mess up my words, I'm going to come across nervous, I'm going to say the wrong thing in the parents' evening. It will create a conclusion about yourself, your identity, and how you see yourself. And then there's another bias involved as well, called the confirmation bias. And what that will do is that will scan all your memories for the evidence that, you know what, you are indeed right. Look at all this other evidence of these times that things didn't go right. And it will present your brain, your reticular activating system will present it with all of this wide bank of evidence. And then what will happen over time is that belief will be embedded. So if you're someone who struggles with public speaking, for example, it's probably based on a few, usually a small handful of situations where you struggled with public speaking in the past. But with repetition and over time, through neuroplasticity, our brain has rewired to basically point out all the times that it's happened, and therefore put us in this bit of confidence conundrum, if you like. So we want to do the opposite. Now, this is a system that I use with people all the time called the Confidence Creator, but there's one step today that I want to focus on with you when it comes to those high pressure situations, and it's this middle one. It's collecting the evidence that you can do this. It's collecting the evidence that you are confident, that you are able, that you are capable. It's collecting the evidence that you don't need to be anxious and that this is a safe environment. So a really easy way to do this is to get a piece of paper, maybe one night when you're in bed with a cup of tea or something, a nice, relaxed, calm environment and situation. And I want you to write down all of the evidence that supports the idea that you are able, capable and confident. So write down all the lessons that went really, really well. Write down all the feedback that children, parents, colleagues have given you. Really create this stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are the real deal, you are not an imposter, and you can do this. This is one of the most powerful activities that we can do. We know that when we repeat this activity in a small way on a regular basis, we can literally rewire the brain to focus on the positives. Because what we're doing here, through neuroplasticity, we're rewiring that reticular activating system to highlight the things that we're great at, to highlight the experiences that we want to remember, rather than the negatives. So we're sort of, as I said earlier, we're exploiting the reticular activating system to basically help us feel more confident. But first of all, as I say, we need to collect that confidence. I'm not going to talk you through the rest of this system because it's not applicable today. But I want you to create a bank of a stack of undeniable proof that you are the real deal, that you are awesome, that you are amazing. And therefore, by doing that and repeating this a few times, you're going to be able to help your brain create a different conclusion about yourself. And of course, this isn't foolproof. There'll be times where cracks start to show, but we need to go back to that stack of evidence. Maybe you have a folder in your photo album on your phone of screenshots of amazing things and feedback that you've got and things you've done. Maybe you have a folder in your desktop. Maybe you have a physical folder of children's cars and the lovely things that they have said about you. All of these things help. They all play a role. So that is one way that we can create confidence before whatever experience you're about to go into, whether it is parents' evening, a job interview, performance management, or whatever else it might be. So that's a little bit on confidence. The next thing I want to talk to you about today is anxiety. Now, before we talk through 6 really practical strategies to help you manage anxiety in the lead up to this event, whatever it might be, we need to talk through DOSE. Now, I'm going to really rapidly run through this, but DOSE essentially is an acronym of 4 chemicals and hormones in the brain, neurotransmitters and hormones in the brain that are responsible for our mental health. So we've got dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. I'm not going to read out everything that's on the screen to you, but there are a few things that we can do to support our general mental health and particularly anxiety by, again, exploiting these chemicals, getting more of them, making the most of them. So, for example, with dopamine, our reward and motivation chemical, we can have focus time. So we can put our phone away, we can have music on, we can get on, we can focus. We can have digital detoxes so we're not getting that junk dopamine from scrolling on our phones. We can get some movement in. We can, again, write down some wins, some small wins. We can have a to-do list and tick things off. Oxytocin, love and connection. We can share smiles with strangers. We can write down things that we're grateful for. We can compliment a friend. We can have phone-free time socializing. Serotonin then, happiness and mood. We can think about getting out in sunlight, particularly when the lovely sunny days are few and far between. We can get out in as much sunlight as possible. We can go out in nature. We can make sure we have a healthy gut by eating plenty of fruits and vegetables. We can get deep sleep. We can do breathing exercises. And endorphins then, our body's natural brain and body's pain and stress reliever. We can have intense movement, so bouts of intense exercise, singing, dancing to your favourite music, real belly laughing. So before we talk through the strategies for anxiety, it's important that we are getting plenty of these things that we can see on the screen here to manage our general mental health and give us a good base of almost a bubble of protection, if you like, against stress and against anxiety as much as possible, which of course is a big challenge for us as teachers. So the final thing I want to run through with you today then are these 6 strategies that I find really, really powerful, really, really applicable to most of us as teachers. So this is for when you're approaching that event, something's coming up, again, giving you a few examples today. Maybe it's, half an hour before parents' evening. Maybe it's just after the kids have gone and you've got 15 minutes between then and the parents arriving. There's some things that you can do in that situation, for example. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique is a really common technique where essentially we focus that reticular activating system, we focus our attention on not the threat, not the perceived threat, not the thing that is bringing fear to us, and sort of heightening our sympathetic nervous system, which is almost that fight or flight response in the body, which causes our heart rate to increase, our body temperature increase, our muscles to contract, and our breathing rate and heart rate to increase as well. Rather than focusing on the sympathetic nervous system, we're going to try to increase the parasympathetic nervous system by grounding ourselves, by, again, being really, really present. So focus on 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Really, really simple grounding technique that, again, brings your attention back to the present. Progressive muscle relaxation is one of my favorites. So again, really simple. It's about tensing and releasing the muscles in your body. You can start with your toes and work your way up. No one around you needs to know that you're doing this. So it's a great one to do subtly as well. Focusing on your breathing then, again, great way to start to activate that parasympathetic nervous system. We can breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. This is box breathing. Also do hand breathing, so we breathe in on the up, out on the down. Just a few really simple strategies. Again, if you are someone who thrives on distraction when you're feeling anxious, try the categories game. So think about things, so I can look outside and say things that are green, and I could then go tree, apple, grass, pen. And by doing this, we're distracting ourselves, and again, giving that RAS time to not focus on the perceived threats around us. You can dip your digits, I love alliteration, but dip your fingers or your toes in cold water, not too cold and definitely not too hot water, but nice cold water. Some people find that going from warm to cool water works really, really well, but think about the temperature, the sensation. Really think about how the water feels moving between your fingers or your toes. Really, really useful one. And finally, visualize your favorite place. There's some amazing research out there that shows that actually visiting, for example, your favorite holiday destination, or visualizing it, thinking again about the 5 senses and really getting into that memory of that experience, it shows that actually the chemical and almost electrical activity of the brain is very, very similar in both those situations. So you don't have to go on holiday to get the benefits of holiday. Even visualizing it can really, really help. So just my top 6 strategies. What I'm going to share with you as well, somewhere below or around this video, is my reducing stress and anxiety pack. There will be another 4 activities you can do as well as these 6, and there's a lot more information about stress, anxiety, challenging your limiting beliefs and your unhelpful thoughts to help you create confidence and reduce your anxiety. Anyway, I hope this has been really, really helpful. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.